Hi, it's Jamie, Progressive's Employee of the Month, 2 months in a row. Leave a message at the... Hi, Jamie. It's me, Jamie. I just had a new idea for our song about the Name Your Price tool. So when it's like, tell us what you want to pay, hey, 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 and the trombone goes, blah, 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 and you say, we'll help you find coverage options to fit your budget. Then we just all do finger snaps while a choir goes, savings coming at ya, savings coming at ya. Yes? No? Maybe? Anyway, see your practice tonight. I got new lyrics for the rap break.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of The Cheapest Meal presented by Deep Fried Draft. This is our 5th episode since we've gone to Blog Talk Radio, and today's going to be a good one. We're going to bring in now a very special guest. He is a member of the Pro Football Writers Association, formerly a writer for the Sports Blog Nation site Stampede Blue, and now a writer for the mothership Colts.com. He is Jake Arthur. Jake, how are you doing today?
Hey, what's up, Brian? I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Hey, man, it's always a pleasure to talk to somebody, especially you're the first guest I've had on my podcast that I've never actually met. Maybe you'll get down to the Senior Bowl one of these years, or if you go now, and we'll catch up.
Yeah, it's been a couple of years for me. I'm hoping to get back down there next January.
Yeah, it's always a good time. It's right in my hometown, of course, so it's easy for me to get there. Not so easy for everybody else, I believe. Jake, so I got to ask you. I had some other questions, but I got to know, how does it feel going from the Sports Blog Nation going over to Colts.com? That's got to be a great feeling for you.
Oh yeah, I'm ecstatic. I mean, I've been working and furthering my career and kind of taking each step as it goes all the time. And I've just been fortunate enough to, be in contact with some good people that have helped me along the way and have allowed me to get my work out there. And it's just exciting not only to finally get to one of the places that I wanted myself to get to, in my career, but people think my work is good enough for it to be on there. So really excited to get started.
Yeah, that's great. So the first question I've got to ask you, and really it's the question that makes all the other questions I'm going to ask you irrelevant as far as the Colts go, but how is Andrew Luck's health, and is he going to be 100% week one?
Yeah, I mean, of course, everything is dependent on how Luck is doing. So as I'm sure he hasn't been throwing the football in practice and all that good stuff, at least not out in front of the media. But Coach Reich said that Luck is supposed to ramp up his progress after minicamp, and then in between next week's minicamp and training camp at the end of July. So whenever he does start throwing, we're not going to see it, and we'll just kind of see what he looks like when training camp starts. Hopefully he's throwing by then. But that does seem to be the next big step, is him throwing.
Right, because like I said, no matter what moves they've done in the off season, if Andrew Luck's not 100%, it's really not going to matter, is it?
Well, the good news is they do have Jacoby Brissett, who's got a season of starting experience under his belt, and things didn't go super smooth for him last year, but he also was thrown in after only being around for like a week and a half or 2 weeks. But now he's had an entire off season with an offensive-minded head coach who's been a quarterback in the NFL. So worst-case scenario, let's say Luck is not out there to begin the year. I do think that they'll have an adequate offense still, I think, just because they're going to have a smart offensive-minded coaching staff, and they're going to have a quarterback talent and experience. So regardless, I think they'll be fine, but of course you would like to have Andrew Luck be the guy out there.
All right, we're a month and a half removed from the draft, but since it's kind of what I do, I'm going to talk about the draft. Colts, I thought they really tackled their needs in the 18 draft class aggressively. I mean, they doubled up on guard, edge rusher, running back, wide receiver. They even drafted 3 linebackers. You like that strategy of doubling up on positions?
Yeah, I really do. It maybe wasn't the sexiest draft, but this front office and coaching staff believes in building the roster from the inside out. You know, take care of the trenches first and then just start fortifying everything else around it. And that's definitely what they did. Quentin Nelson and Braden Smith were 2 of the best interior offensive linemen in the entire draft, and it just so happens they fit a position of need for the Colts. And, you know, it allows the Colts the freedom to use some of their already existing linemen. You know, they can kind of do a little bit more with them, you know, move them around, try them at tackle or try them in other spots. They've been doing a lot of giving guys practice reps all over the line. So adding these couple guys as well as free agent Matt Slauson in the offseason has really helped them with their offensive line. And we'll see what it looks like once the preseason starts. It's kind of hard to gauge what the trenches look like in training camp just because there's not as much contact. But, yeah, on the defensive side of the ball as well, they really needed pass rushers. They got a couple of them in Kamoko Toure and Tyquan Lewis. I really like that Lewis can move inside and out. I think that'll be good for the Colts. Will allow them to be a little exotic at times depending on the situation. But then Darius Leonard as well at linebacker. That was one of my favorite linebackers in the whole draft, and he was the top linebacker for me available at the time that they selected him. So I'm a big fan of that. I think he fits into their new defense really well.
Yeah, you talked about Quentin Nelson and Braden Smith. A lot of people, myself included, consider Quentin Nelson to be the safest pick in this draft class. They're joining Ryan Kelly, a guy who everybody was unanimously the top center in the draft a couple of years ago. If Kelly's healthy, you've got to be excited about the interior line there.
Oh, absolutely. And the Colts are fortunate enough right now to where they can be a little patient with Braden Smith because they do have a couple options at right guard on the other side of Kelly. So they're in a really good spot right now in the interior. Like you said, Quentin Nelson was the safest pick in the draft to me. I understood completely why he would be some people's top overall prospect if you weren't really in love with Saquon Barkley and how he would translate to the league. Ryan Kelly, again, the top center prospect a couple years ago. His key is health, though. Dealt with some issues last year, but I don't know that he ever had the full opportunity to get healthy, so hopefully he's there now. I believe he's been a pretty regular full participant in practices so far, so I think everything is good there. He seems to be fully healed from his concussion that he had late last year. So, yep, everything's pretty much pointing up for the Colts on the interior line, but they've also got – they should also be good on the edges as well. You don't have to really worry about Anthony Costanzo much. And then they have a couple guys who can compete on the right side. They just signed Austin Howard a little bit back ago. They've also got Denzel Good and Joe Haig that could compete there. So they're actually going to be in a spot where they can let the best man win and not just, you know, have to throw a guy out there by default because they have to. They're actually going to have really good competition this year, which is something that we haven't seen from them in a while.
You know, let's get back to the defense right quick. You talked a little bit about Darius Leonard earlier, and he's a guy I liked. I didn't like him at 36th pick, but I like Darius Leonard. I thought he had a great Senior Bowl. I actually liked undrafted linebacker Sky Moore better than Darius Leonard. I know you wrote up a big piece on Moore recently. It was great. Everybody go check that out. But long term, do you think Sky Moore has a chance to make this roster, and can he compete, you know, for a roster spot there this year?
Oh, yeah. Like you, I was a pretty big fan of Sky Moore coming in, and he actually does appear to be impressing the coaching staff in OTA so far. He's gotten some reps with the first team at Mike linebacker. Now, mind you, the Colts have dealt with a little bit of injuries at linebacker right now, and I think right now they're just trying to get a taste of what everyone brings to the table. So they're bringing a lot of guys in and out, but it's led to Moore getting some reps with the first team defense. And while you would have assumed he might have been a will linebacker, he's actually seeing plenty of time at Mike right now. And he's turning heads, so I think he's definitely put himself in a good position to make the team. And he may even, make their decision tough to where they want to give him defensive reps once the season starts if he does make the team.
Yeah, he played Mike earlier in his career at South Carolina, and then when Muschamp came in, he kind of moved to more of the wheel role. But, I mean, you don't set or tie the school record for interceptions if you're not, good in coverage. Let's get some other draft picks. Colts drafted two players I think can add a lot of explosiveness to their offense. I like running back Nyheim Hines from NC State, Northern Iowa wide receiver Darius Fountain. How do you think those guys fit in 2018?
Well, everyone seems to be a real big fan of Nyheim Hines right now. Just because of the Frank Reich connection, a lot of people are kind of comparing Hines to Darren Sproles. I mean, that's natural. They're kind of they've got some similar abilities, but all reports out of OTAs and the off-season workouts and everything have been about how much Hines has the ball in his hands, and they're moving him around everywhere. So they really seem to have a plan for him, and that plan appears to be that he's going to be getting the ball quite a bit coming up in the season, as long as he continues doing his part this summer. And then in terms of Darius Fountain, I think they're pretty big on him as well. But the news as far as rookie receivers goes has actually been more at Deon Cain. He's been making some really good plays in practice lately. He's done it with pretty much all of the quarterbacks that are out there. Of course, Luck hasn't been throwing, but Jacoby Brissett and Phillip Walker and Brad Kaya all have been. So Cain is also kind of impressing in the way that he doesn't – a lot of these guys impress in practice, but they just have a connection with one quarterback. Cain has been really well and has connected with all of them. So he's turning a lot of heads as well.
Yeah, I was surprised he actually fell to the sixth round. I thought he was more of a fourth-round guy, so that could end up being a very very big steal there for the Colts in this draft. Let's talk a little bit about your rivals there in the AFC South. Tennessee, Houston, Jacksonville all seem like they're going to be as good or better in 2018. A healthy Andrew Luck closes that gap. But what else do you think the Colts can do to catch up to those other three teams?
Well, the other teams in the division, whenever they're able to really put a hurting on the Colts, it's usually because of the push they get with their defensive lines. The Jaguars, for example, I think they had 10 sacks in the two teams' first meeting last year. So the Colts have already done a really good job of addressing the offensive line. That should definitely help. Like you said, Andrew Luck closes the gap tremendously. But there's also quite a few talented pass catchers all over the division. It's hard for anyone to have an answer for like DeAndre Hopkins. But the Jaguars have a couple young studs. Tennessee, I think most of us expect Corey Davis to take the next step. So that's one thing is hopefully the Colts' young secondary, hopefully they're able to step up to the challenge with the rest of these pass catchers in the AFC South. Quincy Wilson, really good player, Pierre Desir as well. But pretty much everyone who's going to be starting in the secondary for the Colts, while they all have talent and while they're all very promising, they're pretty unproven for the most part. Clayton Gathers is the old man out there, but he's only been in the league a few years. He's dealt with injuries. Malik Hooker, I think everyone pretty much assumes Hooker's got Pro Bowl potential, but his season ended after I think 7 games last year. So we're going to have to see how the secondary steps up. They're going to have to do a lot of maturing in a hurry, not mentally, but just as NFL players. So we'll see how that goes. But we really need to make sure the secondary is able to handle the rest of the division.
You mentioned the secondary. A couple of guys have entered the supplemental draft that rarely ever produces anything worthy of talent. But you got two guys this year, Adonis Alexander, big 6'3" corner for Virginia Tech, and Sam Beal, corner from Western Michigan, could actually go higher than normal in the supplemental draft. Those guys got any interest to you in the Colts?
I would be interested in him if I were a decision maker for the Colts, just because they both fit the mold of what the Colts like to look for in defensive backs. Both, decent enough size and ball skills. And with the Colts going to the Tampa 2, it's going to involve a little more zone to where those players just kind of get to rely on their natural abilities to keep an eye on the ball and where the quarterback's going to go with it and then make plays on the ball. Chris Ballard, you don't see them acquire many players through trade, but this to him is basically it's going to be an extra draft, which that's what the supplemental draft is, but rarely do we see much ever come out of it. But I'm interested to see if Ballard will have much interest in this because he is a draft guy. He's not someone who's going to go and throw money around in free agency. And we've only seen one full offseason out of him. So I guess we'll see if they're able to hook him in with any of these intriguing guys. And, he acquired 11 draft picks. I think it was 11 this draft. So I wouldn't be surprised for them to go ahead and pull the trigger on this. Now, what round it would be another question. But, a lot of teams, these two players make sense for a lot of teams. So wouldn't be surprised to see the Colts fall in line either.
Well, I mean, you have to think you've got the extra 2 next year from the Jets trade, so maybe you can use a third, one of these guys if you really like them. That's probably about as high as I think a team's going to be willing to spend.
Yeah, I don't see anyone going too early. Josh Gordon was the last kind of high pick in the supplemental draft. Is that right? I think he was maybe second for the Browns.
Second round pick. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you don't see that all too often. I think you're probably right, where third is probably the richest the team would be willing to go.
Funny thing, I was doing a little research I wrote a little article up on the supplemental draft the other day, doing a little research on it, and in 1990, supplemental draft, or is it 89? I can't remember. Anyway, there was three first-round picks used in the supplemental draft. All 2 on quarterbacks, 2 on quarterbacks, and 1 on a running back. The Cowboys took Steve Walsh, the Cardinals took Tim Rosenbaugh, and the Broncos took Bobby Humphrey, a running back from Alabama. And the first-round pick the Cowboys gave up, they eventually reacquired it in the Herschel Walker trade, drafted Emmitt Smith. So there you go. It all worked out for them.
Oh, yeah. Jimmy was wheeling and dealing in that draft.
Crazy stuff. Jake, tell everybody where they can find your work.
On social media, you can always find me at Jake Arthur NFL. And as of now, you can find me on Colts.com. I'm going to get started on producing my content here next week, so keep an eye out there.
Hey, I'm looking forward to reading your work at Colts.com this season. Hopefully now that you're with the Colts, you'll get down to Mobile for the Senior Bowl, and we'll catch up, have lunch down there. Jake, I appreciate you joining me today. Thanks for taking your time out on this Saturday to talk Colts on the cheapest meal.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks again for having me, and hopefully we can link up down there in Mobile.
All right. Thanks a lot, Jake. That was Jake Arthur. He is a writer now for Colts.com. Jake has previously done work for the Sports Blog Nation site Stampede Blue, and as he said, you can follow him on Twitter at Jake Arthur NFL. It was great hearing about the Colts, not a team that I generally talk about a lot, but I did like their draft for the most part. I like their strategy, getting a lot of players in. They had 11 draft picks, I believe, and including they had a handful of undrafted guys I really liked, especially Sky Moore, the linebacker from South Carolina, who Jake told you is taking some first-team reps in OTAs due to some injuries, but impressing the Colts defensive brass, and that's all you can really ask for. Don't know who the guest is going to be next week. Still kind of working through the kinks on that. But you can go back and listen to all of our other episodes, starting with we had Pigskin Paul Gilmette from Great Blue North Report talking draft and Packers and such. We had Joe Everett from Draft Scouts and NFL Draft Bible, talking gambling and as well as some NFL draft. We talked some fantasy football and dynasty football with Andy Miley of dynastyblitz.com and Fantasy Dynasty Trade Calculator. And last week we had Pete Smith on talking all things Browns, and this week Jake Arthur talking Colts. So we're going to work on a guest for next week. But until then, everybody, follow me on Twitter at DeepFriedDraft. You can find all of my work at deepfrieddraft.com. You can download this podcast on iTunes as well as Stitcher. Search The Cheapest Meal to find those. You can also find videos of mine at YouTube. Search Deep Fried Draft for that. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Until next week.
Hey, Joe, your Pep Boys Tech here. Over the years, I've helped a lot of customers keep their vacations safe. Just a little prevention is always better than risking your trip. So stop by Pep Boys and save $50 off any Wagner Premium Brake Service. And before you travel, we'll check your fluids and alignment, as well as rotate and fill your tires for free. Pep Boys uses the highest quality brands for the best prices around. You have my word.
Offer through May 27th with mail-in rebate. Free services for rewards members. See restrictions at petboys.com.
This Father's Day, Lowe's celebrates dads who get things done. Bike tune-ups to engine overhauls, those dads need a tool like Craftsman. And now, Craftsman is at home at Lowe's. Found in garages and toolboxes across the country, Craftsman's the tool weekend warriors and pros alike rely on. If your dad's one of those guys, give him Craftsman this Father's Day for a memory and a tool he'll hold on to for a lifetime. The perfect Father's Day gift of Craftsman starts with Lowe's.